The story took place in the summer of 2013 when I was a counselor. The hospital arranged for me to attend an intensive course for counselors. This course was very informative, and one of the highlights was for each participant to experience hypnosis personally. When I first heard about this requirement, I felt a little nervous and uneasy. I had never experienced hypnosis in person and had no idea what it would feel like. However, my colleagues were excitedly looking forward to the experience. We received some training and instruction before conducting hypnosis, to make sure we were able to relax and enter the hypnotic state. As I lay back in the chair and entered the hypnotic state, I felt myself gradually relaxing and my body gradually becoming heavy. In that state, I felt as if I was floating in a dream world. The guide continued to guide me and asked me to imagine that I was on a beautiful beach. I listened to the sound of the waves lapping against the shore and felt the warm sunlight shining on my body. I felt very relaxed and happy. Finally, the instructor slowly guided me back into the real world. When I woke up, I felt my body and mind were fully relaxed and I felt very comfortable and refreshed. This hypnosis experience made me feel the power of hypnosis and gave me a better understanding of the principles and applications of hypnotherapy. My first session went very well and I was able to relax and control myself very well. Afterwards, I had dinner with my colleague and prepared to go back to the hotel to rest. It was becoming dark by then. When I got back to the hotel, I was ready to go to rest. Not long after I laid down, I started to feel tightness in my chest. The feeling came and went very quickly. Although I had had similar pains many times before, this time the tightness was more pronounced and made me a little worried. The next morning, I woke up still feeling a little uncomfortable, but I decided to attend the class that day anyway. As I was in the initial stages of the session and ready to get into a relaxed state, the pain in my chest became even worse. I felt an invisible force squeezing in my chest, making it impossible for me to breathe. I told my teacher about the situation and told them I needed help. The pain in my chest also became more intense, as if a hand was holding my heart tightly. I felt like I was going to die. Suddenly, I heard a loud sound, like thunder. The next thing I knew, I was out of my body. My pain disappeared instantly and I found myself suspended in the upper left side of my body. It all happened very quickly. I felt like I was in a very calm state, like I was suspended in space, without any gravity or restraints. The experience was amazing. But it also scared me. I didn't know what was happening or if I would ever be able to return to my body. Suddenly, I was transported to another dimension. I was wrapped in a gentle silence. There was not a sound around me, only a bright light. I cannot describe in words how bright that light was, because I had never seen such a light before. The color of the light was also hard to describe in words, as if it was white distilled from other colors. That light exuded a strong aura of love and acceptance. I had a strong urge to get as close to that light as possible. I felt myself becoming light and free from the bonds of gravity, as if I could fly in this infinitely wide space. I didn't want to leave this place, I wanted to stay in that place forever. In order for you to be able to understand my story, I need to explain some of my previous experiences. When I was young, my father abused me verbally and physically. Every time I was abused, I felt helpless and desperate. It was like being trapped in a dark place, unable to find a way out. I wanted my own father to approve of me, but he always criticized me and made me feel very sad. During that time, I had doubts about my worth and even began to wonder if I really deserved to be loved. This feeling of helplessness made me feel desperate. I had also had a very painful marriage. I prayed that God would save my marriage. I tried everything to save my marriage. But in the end I failed. My greatest heartache is that I still have 2 daughters and I can't give them a complete home. I didn't want them to grow up in this environment. They are more important to me than anything else. My wife once told me, either I leave or she takes the kids and leaves me. I thought it was best for my daughters that I leave. That way they could remain at home and their lives would not change much. I feel fortunate that my oldest daughter is old enough to understand the situation. She is doing very well in all areas. My younger daughter, however, clearly did not understand what was happening. She was only 6 years old. As I was packing to leave, she came into the bedroom. She gently tugged on my sleeve and said in a trembling little voice, "Daddy, I don't want you to leave, will you come back?" There are no words to express the sadness I felt at that moment. I took my 2 daughters into my arms and told them while sobbing, "I feel very sorry." As I now stood in the presence of this light, all the pain I had felt before was healed. I heard a gentle voice say, "Give me your sorrow, you can hang on, and everything will be fine." These words kept repeating in my ears. Then I saw 2 long rays of light coming out of the light and touching my head and cheeks. These rays conveyed love and energy. Then, it embraced me completely. It let me release all my sorrow and pain. These 2 rays embraced me over and over again. It was the most intense emotional experience I have ever experienced. I don't know how to accurately describe this feeling. The feeling was so real and made me feel more at ease and calm than ever before. With the light shining through, I knew I was no longer alone. I felt an unconditional love. This kind of love does not require any quid pro quo, just a pure acceptance and understanding. I don't know how long I have been here, but time is no longer an important concept to me. A man's voice told me, "You have a lot of work to do. You have to go back now." The words made me feel uneasy because I didn't want to leave this wonderful place. As the voice faded away, my surroundings began to become a blur. The bright light also began to fade. I began to feel an uneasiness that I didn't want to leave this wonderful place and I didn't want to go back to real life. But I knew that I had to go back. I don't know how I came back. When I woke up again, I found myself lying on the floor. My mentors and classmates were all around me. They were so happy to see me wake up. At this point in my life, my emotional state was so complicated and confusing. I felt both shocked and frustrated, and at the same time felt inner peace and comfort. My mentor told me that they didn't call an ambulance because she thought I was going through some kind of spiritual experience. She told me later that as I lay on the floor, my face glowed and tears streamed down my face. There was a rag doll on the floor that I had been holding. I gently stroked it as I cried softly. Although it sounds a little weird, that's the way it was. At this time, I realized that this rag doll was more than just a toy, it represented something inside of me. My teacher told me that this rag doll now belonged to me and that I could have it forever. This souvenir is very meaningful to me. It represents love and care, so I can always feel this emotion. I have kept it until now. After that coma, I went to the hospital to undergo a series of tests. The doctors told me that I did not have a heart attack. They could not determine the exact cause, but they thought it was a sudden onset of illness. I felt very confused and upset because I didn't know if the disease would reappear. However, after a month, I noticed that the pain in my chest disappeared. I began to feel much lighter throughout. I regained my health and energy. I returned home with my mind full of doubts, not knowing exactly what this experience meant or what to do next. Suddenly, I heard the same voice I had heard a few days earlier, and it rang out again, growth. This voice was very clear, as if it came from another world, full of energy and determination. It repeated once more, grow. This time the voice was louder, full of expectation and encouragement for me. Then it repeated itself again, but this time in a commanding tone, as if telling me, you must grow. This voice echoed in my head and made me feel a strong force pushing me. I began to think about what was missing in my life, what I needed to change, what I needed to do. I began to look for answers in my own life. I invested more time and energy into exploring my inner world and understanding the meaning of my life. I worked hard to change my way of thinking and my habits, and began to meet challenges and opportunities with confidence. After this incident, I tried to salvage my marriage again. After a period of time, we restarted our marriage. I clearly remember that sunny morning when I stood at her door. My heart was beating very fast. I knocked on the door and she opened it. We looked at each other and didn't speak, just felt each other's presence in silence. Suddenly, I took out a ring and said, I know I have made many mistakes, but I am willing to make changes for you. Are you willing to marry me again? Tears came to her eyes, then she nodded and said, I do. We both hugged each other tightly. I feel so blessed that I can continue to live with my 2 daughters. They were also a big part of the reason we remarried. We were reunited as a family again and started a new life. My life has changed a lot. I became more confident and determined and began to live more positively. I felt I became more mature and began to understand the true meaning of life.